Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Kathryn Hecht, and I am the Executive Director of the Alexander Valley Film Society, and I am thrilled to welcome you to the closing night of the 6th Annual Alexander Valley Film Festival. I cannot believe that we are actually here and that we've had 5 days of film and conversation and pickup dinners and red flag warnings and smoke and ash. I think I'm going to sleep well tonight, but I would be remiss if I didn't thank about 1 billion people who helped put this thing together. First of all, to our sponsors, Alain Martin Pire and Johnny Drake, your compass in a complex real estate market, and our friends Ron and Jane Pavelka of Pavelka and Associates, and a couple of other annual leadership donors that I really want to point out and thank with all my heart. Bob Scott and Tim McDonald, thank you so much for being a part of this. We're just thrilled to have you along for the ride with us. Barbara Grosecki and Tony Crabb, and Dolores and Gary Arabian. Thank you all for being a part of what has been a total project of love and community-driven spirit. And tonight is no less. It's just more of the same. We're putting on a show. We're going to get through it. We've got the resilience and the grit to get it done. And boy, if we have not attracted, I guess it flies attract honey, bees attract honey. I don't know what the saying is. We have been so lucky this weekend, had the most scintillating, inspiring conversations about justice, about how to make changes, both systemic and small, in our own sphere of influence, as people, as artists, as community members. And tonight we get to close out the festival with 3 filmmakers, all of whom had a piece of artwork in the festival with us this weekend. And now we get to talk to them about what social justice storytelling really looks like, and what we want, the kinds of changes we want to affect as artists in the grand scale, as well as in the smaller, like I said before, our own sphere of influence, and how those things connect. So we're just so excited that the Film Society, and in particular the Film Festival, is a platform for that kind of discussion. If we can't do it here, where are we going to do it? So without further ado, please welcome our very special guests here to help us close out the festival. Director Christine Yu, Director H.P. Mendoza, and Director Hillary Bachelder. Hi, you guys.
Hi.
Hey there.
Hello.
Yay.
Yay.
Oh my God. No. It really has. It's like, I don't think I'll ever get tired of having amazing conversations, and to have them all kind of cramped in this new format, cramped into one weekend, and be meeting each other and working together in this new way, because we're working together to tell stories and communicate ideas and stuff. And it's a new kind of like energizing and exhausting. I don't know if y'all feel that way, but yeah, so let's start there. Let's just start with where you are, physically, spiritually, mentally, whatever. Tell us your name, a little bit about the film, and just a snapshot of where you are right now. Hillary, would you like to kick us off?
Sure. So my name's Hillary. I'm the director, cinematographer, and editor of a film called Represent. It's a feature-length documentary that follows 3 women who run for local office in the Midwest. We follow 3 women who are from both sides of the political aisle. And I would say physically, that's the easiest one to answer there. Typically, I'm based in Chicago. I'm currently in New Mexico. Emotionally, spiritually, it's been a week. It's been a week.
That's okay.
It's been a year. Or at least 6 months.
HP, how about you?
Hi, I'm H.P. Mendoza. The film that was in this festival was Fruit Fly. It's the first film I directed 10 years ago, and this year happened to be the 10th anniversary of that musical. And it's, what would be the briefest rundown of what Fruit Fly is about? It's about a Filipina performance artist who comes to San Francisco to try to find her biological mother, but finds out the only thing she discovers is that she prefers the company of gay men, and it's a musical. and it's the 10th anniversary, and we celebrated it with the Alexander Valley Film Festival as a sing-along with lyrics and bouncing balls on screen and everything. I'm currently in Massachusetts visiting my in-laws. My husband is sleeping right now. We're escaping the smoke and fires of California. Where am I emotionally and spiritually? If I were to pick a word to describe it, 2020.
Yes. Christine.
Yeah, hey, my name is Christine Yu, and I am the director-producer of a feature-length documentary that is in post-production. We are inching closer to the finish line, thank God. It's called 26.2 to Life, the San Quentin Prison Marathon. Thus the shirt. And it's about a marathon that takes place inside the walls of San Quentin State Prison and focuses on a running club called the 1,000 Mile Club that organizes this race. And we follow the coach, the head coach, Frank Rona, who's local to the Bay Area, and 3 guys inside in their journey to run the marathon and navigate a life in prison. And in that sense, the marathon itself is sort of a metaphor for living life in prison and an approach to living life in prison. I am in Venice, California. I'm lucky because my air is good over here right now. And as for 2020, I'm taking it day by day. I'll just say that.
That's a great plan. And just to remind our audience, so when Christine joined us, we had some of the coaches from the film, and we had Markel Taylor, who was a runner with the club and is still running post parole, and tried to break a sub-3 marathon yesterday and finished in 3 hours and 6 seconds. Is that right?
Yes, it was heartbreaking. Yeah, he missed it by 6 seconds.
Oh my God. Oh my God! But that was just such a lovely conversation.
Yes, it really was. Yeah, thank you, Kathryn.
Oh yeah. And then HP, we had you and your lead actress, L.A. Renigan, and that was fun just to revisit the film and all of the impact that's had. And then Hillary, today we got to talk to you and the 3 amazing women from your film. That was so inspiring. We really could have been going on for a couple more hours, I feel sure. So let's, taking all of that into account and what we just talked about, taking 2020 one step at a time. Let's talk about how COVID, in particular, keeping us distanced has changed storytelling. And then also how it's changed storytelling, how it might have influenced the kinds of stories that you want to tell, and then how the current political climate fits into there or not, which is a big question, but I think it's a good place for us to start. HP, can you kick us off with that?
Sure. I think the interesting thing is months ago, I just moved back to San Francisco from Tokyo this past April. I was living in Tokyo with my husband, and the company that we were both working for were very concerned about our safety because they were like, look, we're much more dense than New York. We're primed to be the next New York. We don't know, you guys have different visas. You could be separated during a pandemic. We don't want that for you. You have 9 days to pack up your apartment. And what happened was, I remember, and I'm going to flash back even further. Months before that, I'd made this split screen video that was kind of making fun of Zoom calls. And I did that because that's just how I was doing things from Tokyo. And I tweeted it, and I was like, oh, I know who's going to like this. My friends are going to like this. This will get 10 likes. It got 2 likes. And I was like, oh, that's too bad. And I realized it's because people didn't really know what Zoom was, right? As soon as that happened, I tweeted it again, and it got 444,000 shares. and then Good Morning America started talking to me about what does it mean to be a Zoom artist? I'm like, no, it's great.
Wow.
So it was neat because I started thinking to myself, well, it's really cool to be entertaining still, right? Whether I'm vlogging or doing a split screen video with myself, I mean, whatever. But then I started realizing that a lot of people needed outlets, so I started like doing visiting and watching a lot of improv on Zoom, and it's tough to do theater, it's tough to do live performance because of tech issues like lag and whatnot, right? So I think I did manage to see a short film that was done on Zoom, and it was a horror film. It was actually pretty effective. It's a rough cut, so I can't tell you what it was, but it's coming out soon. It's coming out for Halloween, so keep an eye for this Zoom horror film. I do think that now, on September 27th, I have different things to say. I do think that I don't mind that there are a lot of my fellow storytellers out there who are just like, look, I don't want to touch politics right now. I get it. I think like when I was a lot younger, I'd be like, no, you have to talk about it. You have to let it seep into your stories. But there are many forms of exhaustion happening right now, like Zoom exhaustion, like split screen exhaustion. Like there's like I love this right now, but I still am not with you, So like we have to connect in other ways. And a lot of times I just kind of feel like I will let you connect the way you want to. So what's great is that I do get to talk about what's happening right now with some of these projects that I'm working on next. And what's interesting about that is some of these projects that I'm working on are young adult stories. They're for like the YA demographic. And I think had I done these things in the past, they would have said things like, could we keep race out of this, or could we keep like politics out of this? But now everybody's like, please put it in the script. Wow. So I think everyone's ready. People who once considered themselves apolitical.
That's fascinating.
I love it.
Yeah, I do too. Not that I asked myself, but yeah. Christina, what about you?
I mean, in terms of COVID itself as a subject matter, I'm based in LA. I've been working in quote unquote Hollywood. I think it will remain to be seen if people actually will want stories of COVID, or opt for other types of entertainment. I think we are living with it and the pain of it every day. So will people want that as quote unquote entertainment? I'm not exactly sure. I don't know if I'd want it, for myself. But at the same time, I think this era, of course, has brought out a lot of issues and, put it in 2020 sight, if you will. This is 2020, at the same time, obviously being a female, being an Asian female director, it's usually not a likely combination in this town. And I have really struggled a lot and have had to be independent, as a result of that. So at the same time, I do see that change and people want change in the halls of power, or at least people are starting to talk about it, which is a great and hopeful sign. And I feel like I've really it's just harder, I think, as a female minority director and just in general. And so, and for sometimes, I felt like giving up, over the years. But I think, but now, in this sort of moment of national or global despair right now, in some ways, I have a lot more hope, because I do think that people are recognizing, wanting to talk about issues that matter to me. And have mattered to me for a long time, because that's kind of why I got into, becoming a storyteller in the first place. So I do think that there still is, reason to hope and to, to continue to, to do what we do, essentially.
I love that. Hillary, what about you?
So my film Represent was slated to premiere in March, and that didn't go so well.
Oh, no.
It's been a weird year to release a film. We're lucky to have a PBS broadcast coming up in a month, though, which is a solid thing to be able to hold on to. And again, the weird kind of new landscape for distribution and releasing films in this moment. But I think and Represent is an election film, and I think what I'm sort of feeling a little burnt out on is the idea of turning around anything particularly topical. And so I think since this has happened, I've had this like intense personal sort of wrestling moment of, you know, I'm finally ready to step into another project, having released this one. But at the same time, it was such, honestly, a frustrating process to be working on an election film. And the elections in my film took place in 2017 and 2018. But it's still, you know, every time we were pitching the film, every time we were, you know, discussing broadcast, discussing distribution, it's like everyone, that wave of interest would peak when something political happened or when we're nearing an election, and then everyone was interested in the film, and then the interest dies down when the moment dies down. And it was just such a frustrating, and like, you know, we didn't really get to dictate so much of our own timeline on the film, because it was like, it has to come out before 2020, you know, it has to release it, and for better or for worse, this is your window. And so I'm just kind of burnt out on that idea of like picking up something that's super topical of the moment, might be, you know, catch someone's eye, a funder or distributor's eye right now, and then it just kind of goes away, and then you don't end up getting to tell the story that you wanted to tell, or that felt important, or really get to sort of mine what it was about the story that felt important. And so I think, yeah, as much as, you know, as this moment kind of hit, I was like, there's so much happening. There's so many stories that need to be told. And I'm interested in telling a lot of them. And I'm still interested in telling those stories, but I don't want to be caught up in this, sort of the machinery of how films get funded and released. So I'm kind of taking the moment to work with the film as it gets out into the world, to try and use it as a tool for change, and to kind of take a deep breath and see really like, what are the stories that are important and long lasting, and that I can still tap into and tell in a way that, like, yeah, it takes a couple of years at a time to make a documentary. So you have to make something that you're so committed to, and B, you know, is going to be relevant in 2 to 3 years.
Gosh.
And again, unfortunately, this pandemic is surfacing all of these other issues that were always underlying. So it's for social issue filmmakers, it's like, take your pick,
right?
You know, from this buffet of inequality. You know, what do you want to focus on? Which is a horrible way to think about the world right now. But again, at the same time, it's like I want to be sure that whatever I commit to next is something that I can give my all, and that I can do justice to the issue in a kind of long-term way.
I hear you. I hear you. I'm also struck by the fact that I'm making a connection between one of Christine's subjects, Markel, who was with us yesterday, and Maya from your film, Hillary, both talking about the importance of mental health. I mean, like, really signaling this is something that if we don't take care of, no one is going to take care of it for us. And what I just heard in what you're saying, Hillary, is like this self-care that has to happen while we're processing all of this stuff and deciding where to take it next. So that's an interesting point of connection. So let's move on to talking a little bit more about social justice. And I think this is important. So I don't want any of you to have to relive trauma, but I also would like to know a little bit about your awakening and how you came into your awareness of social justice, and how and why it became such a substantial part of your career and your artistry as a filmmaker. So, Hillary, let's go back to you. Can you start with that?
I'll do my best.
That's all we ask.
So, you know, I sort of struggle to answer this in some ways, because I feel like I was just always that kid in a way that was absolutely obnoxious. And I think my journey through sort of like a social justice space is more about learning to be less self-righteous and more humble and taking steps back. Like I grew up in a very white town in the whitest state. But I still like had this strong, like fiery, like, oh, we got to do good in the world. We got to do good in the world. But I didn't really have a sense of what that meant tangibly. And I was just like always a kid with a cause. Like I remember being like, I don't know, 8 years old or something. And my dad had to like cut down a tree that was next to our house because it had died and it was going to fall in the house. But I was like, no, this is an environmental issue and I will sit in this tree and keep my dad from cutting it down. And he's like, Hillary, we live in the forest. Like I'm cutting this one tree so it doesn't like crash into your bedroom. Like you can get out of the tree now. So I definitely had that drive, but it was a very self-righteous kind of approach to social justice. And it took moving out of my very small white town and going to college and living in Chicago and working with incredible other filmmakers and being in kind of political spaces, social justice spaces in Chicago for a lot of years to kind of to put the pieces together about the ways that I had the different things that I had been ignorant to, or the ways that I'd approached social justice work that were entirely self-serving. And I feel like that has also been a process in, or it's sort of reflected in the type of films that I make, where I almost like, I'm a very slow thinker. Like it takes me a while to process like how I think about an issue or something. And so it's so important to be putting out like advocacy films and strictly advocacy work. But I think my films at this point like really hesitate on the edge where it's like, well, I haven't quite made up my mind about this thing. Like I'd rather kind of explore it and overwork it and think it through, because I've sort of learned to try and take those steps back and do more of the like slow thinking, deep processing around issues. So that tends to be where my work goes to a little bit more these days.
HP, what about you?
Awareness of social justice in my career or in my life? What would you? I mean, I feel like there are like waves. I guess the way I would say it is I don't really want to think of myself or position myself as a social justice filmmaker. I want to think of myself as someone who likes doing social justice panels like this. Ever since like 2004, I've been like the inclusion guy. I've been the diversity guy. I've been talking about like conversations around race at Sundance. But the films that I make, I would like to think have a social justice bent, but I don't want you to know it. You know, like I feel like everything I do, I want to Trojan horse you with it. Like I feel like no, it really I love it. Well, I feel I'm from San Francisco. I grew up in San Francisco. I was the majority. You know, I didn't really feel scrutinized or experience any racial discrimination until I came out of the closet. It was interesting, you know. It's like I came out as a gay man, and suddenly I was like, "Hey, this sure is a white boy's town," and like, you know, and I think what happened was, you know, every little thing you do that gets you closer and closer to becoming a grown up just sandpapers your eyes, right? You start to see how systems work. You start to see how certain people, you know, why certain people don't have the things that you have, and why you don't have the things that certain other people have, right? And you start to try to tie it together. And in San Francisco, I am privileged enough to have that narrative fed to me. You know what I mean? It's very much a San Francisco thing to just kind of like want to be an activist and want to be socially active. And you guys know who Kate Kendall is? She was the executive director of the National Center for Lesbian Rights. I remember first hearing the phrase social justice warrior in the 90s. And I was like, that's me. Now it's a pejorative, right? However, between that time when I first heard the phrase social justice warrior to now, when it's now a pejorative that's being thrown around the right, I think there was a moment where I thought to myself, well, you know, if I just keep regurgitating the narrative that I've been fed, that I do believe in, I'm really just kind of in this echo chamber in San Francisco. And I'm really like, my audience is really just the people who are probably just going to be nodding during the entire film. And don't get me wrong, like, you know, in college and like even a few short films, early short stuff that I did in the late 90s, they were very, you know, they were those social justice like short films. It's like don't be racist to me, you know, like the character is facing this adversity and then they overcome it in the end because they fought really hard. And then of course I look at all the people watching, it's like my family, you know, and I realized, I was like, okay, what if I started with maybe kind of making some media that might be kind of like, you know, irreverent. The first movie I wrote was called Colma the Musical, and it was like everyone referred to it. LA Times called it like Kevin Smith meets Ben Folds. And what happened? All the Clerks fans came to go see it. And then like halfway through the film, they're like, wait, this lead character's gay and he's Filipino, you know? and they're seeing what it means to have to come out, because it was about me coming out, and it was pretty much a coming of age story and a coming out story, and it was a musical. And it was a raunchy rated R film too, which is what people went to go see. And ever since then, I was like, hey, you know what? I can speak to audiences that normally wouldn't listen to these rants. So with Fruit Fly, which is what's screened here at your festival, it was a very big thing for me to make the kind of movie I'm very in tune with, like what quote unquote gay cinema is. And like, I feel like at that time in 2010, a lot of gay media, I don't know what a lot of my gay friends really just kind of sought out, which is like, nothing too heavy, just give us something fun. I'm like, yeah, okay, sure. Let's rent something fun. Let's rent Showgirls again. Why not? And I was like, you know what? What if I did make a movie that took place in San Francisco in the gay scene, and then kind of snuck some things in, and it had to do with race, and it had to do with, you know, like with the Castro, or I don't want to say the Castro. Let's just say the gay community. How mainstream gay media and gay mentality, at least at the time, was a lot more misogynist than it is now. And a lot of the humor was kind of steeped in misogyny. And by the end of Fruit Fly, sure, you did listen to a musical number in which you listened to two guys sing about being versatile bottoms, but also you did hear this plaintive narrative about how things could be better. So I think for me, and even with Bitter Melon, which I think you saw, Kathryn, right?
Mm.
You know, I think people see that, they're like, oh, it's a big old murder mystery. I'm like, yeah, but I'm sneaking in things in there. It's really a movie about toxic masculinity. Yeah. And I do think that for me, the fight that I want to fight, the hill that I want to die on, is talking to people that I normally wouldn't. And that's, I think, where I continue to strive to be with my films or any media or music that I make.
We're going to come back to that, HP, because you just articulated a nuance about the difference between social justice storytelling, like intentionally, and just having it be a part of who you are and the way you tell stories. There's a very interesting fine line in there, but we'll come back to that. Christine,
I want to clarify that I don't want to make it sound qualitative. I don't want to make it sound like I chose the right way. You know, everyone fights this battle their own way, and that's the way that works for me. Some of my favorite films are just straight up social justice movies. Mm-hmm. You know, and I just don't think I would have done them as well. You know, so this isn't, you know, a right or wrong.
Yeah, maybe they were offended. I wasn't. Christine, what about you? So, because you have focused on underrepresented communities for a while, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's because of, you know, how I grew up. I grew up in Iowa City, and then my parents moved to Memphis, Tennessee, when I was in 7th grade. And so I really actually confronted racism from a very, very young age. I mean, I was very aware that I was not in the majority from, you know, like age 4 or something like that. You know, I have very distinct memories of that. And of course, not seeing any, you know, Asian people on television. You know, and I was a TV kid. I mean, I watched a lot of TV, okay? But, you know, not seeing anybody that looks like you, you know, it has an effect, you know, and it promotes self-hatred. I mean, there's a lot of, you know, dislike. And so I, you know, in a lot of ways felt like, and it happened by accident, you know, when I was probably, I think it was the summer between 7th and 8th grade, I went back to Korea for the first time. And, you know, and that really sort of, I would say, sort of revolutionized the way that I felt about myself, you know, reconnected with myself. And then I really hated going to school in Memphis a lot. I went to a school with, you know, sort of a very Southern Belle, actually, environment, St. Mary's Episcopal School for, you know, young ladies. You had chapel every day. I mean, and, you know, I am, you know, very actually good friends still, though, with a lot of the girls that I went to school with, and I keep in touch with them. So, but, you know, the N-word was used every day, pretty much part of colloquial language. So I was very confronted with racial situations, you know, very loudly. But at the same time, you know, I grew up playing piano and did fine art. And so that was always sort of a way for me to cope, I guess. I found film really by accident. And when I could, combine sort of the visual with the music, and combine it with story and experience, I felt like, what do I have to offer, in terms of storytelling? And I think that I've had some unique experiences and perspectives that I hope to, and I guess use that sort of, I think it ends up working in my advantage in some ways in the documentary field, is particularly I found, because people actually, as an Asian female artist and as a director working, say, having been in this town for a long time too, people actually don't expect much from you. They don't expect, you to succeed. They don't expect, there's very little expectation for you to succeed, actually. So in the documentary field, I found that is a very interesting place because it also allowed me to, I think, create a sense of safety with my subjects, that they feel like I'm not going to use their material, or I'm going to honor their stories and tell the truth of it, because I also know what a lot of times it's like to, be on that side of things as well. I think that they know that I'm coming from a perspective of not being in the establishment. So, and at first in my work, I pursued it more through narrative filmmaking. I came from that background. I did a narrative feature before that was an all Korean American cast wedding comedy, before Crazy Rich Asians, several years before. And when I was finished, I was told by distributors that, a rom-com with an all Asian cast will never sell, so I, and during the casting and financing process, how many times am I going to hear, well, this character really should be white or whatever, I'm not, I'm here for a very specific purpose, I think, and the kind of stories that I tell are, I'm going to try to do what other people can't, I guess, I make my place, I guess, with that. So, I don't know. I guess I'll just close with that.
Oh, it's so good. I mean, we're already getting, I am already hearing a real, I was going to say bifurcated, and that's not the right word because that sounds like separate, but I'm hearing this real range of experience-driven choices that have to do with background and aesthetic and lived experience. It's really interesting. And then all of those nuances come out in your work, whether they're intentional choices or not, I
want to tack on to what Christine is saying, because just as a moment of commiseration, if you don't mind, because with specifically with Fruit Fly, I remember looking for a distributor, and I think I might have been spoiled by the first film because, it's like everyone says, oh, that was the Lionsgate film. I was like, yeah, but they didn't see that as an Asian film because it was very much like it was also gay. And I don't know, it was just really, really interesting how I think because maybe one of the main characters besides me was someone who was, for all intents and purposes, white passing. He was Latino, but I think for the most part, people thought he was white. And when the DVD came out, all of a sudden, none of us were on the cover, and the thumbnails in the back of the DVD were just pictures of extras that were white.
Oh my God!
And it's fun. This was 2005. I'm like, okay. Yeah. I mean, I wasn't saying, hey, it's 2005, but I mean, at the time, I was like, well, we do know we have a long way to go. But so when I made Fruit Fly, looking for a distributor, and I remember approaching a distributor that also ran a film festival, and the executive director of that film festival was hosting a panel, which was diversity and inclusion in gay media. So I'm like, sure, I'll talk on that panel. I'm your man. And I remember at that point being told in front of a bunch of students of color, because this is in a college town, and these were all film students, film majors, and the ED of that festival saying, well, with all due respect, though, HP, you seem to be a talented guy. You write a good tune, you write a good musical, but let's just face it, Asian faces don't sell. And this is at that diversity panel. And what really broke my heart was I just had to fight back. I'm like, I just want to ask every person of color on this panel right now, does anyone feel the same way that he does? Does anyone feel that he's speaking some truth? And they all kind of did. And one of the filmmakers was like, I hear what you're saying. You fight the good fight, but in the end, I'm just trying to buy a house, and I'm just like, what's going on? I looked in the audience, and that's what really broke my heart. I saw a bunch of students of color with notebooks nodding and taking notes. And I'm like, don't take note. Don't take note. And to this day, because I'm still friends with this MF on Facebook, he is no longer the executive director. I like sharing some stuff on his wall, saying that Crazy Rich Asians made some money, saying that Kim's Convenience is doing well, sharing The Farewell by Lulu Wang, just like sharing all these Asian American stories and showing how well they're selling.
Zing!
Ding!
I mean, it took 10 years, but hey.
Yeah.
Well, you know what?
It takes time, it does take time. And, this is the moment, though, that we're in, which is a great moment because before we couldn't really have these conversations, actually, this is probably, probably one of the most transparent, live discussions I think that I've been on. So kudos to you, Kathryn, and AVFF. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Something that reminds me about HP, and then we're going to get to one last question here, but we had this incredible panel about trans representation in the media this past Thursday night, and we'll have the link available after Tuesday once the festival closes. That'll go out on social media. But Dr. Susan Stryker, who was also in the film Disclosure, was on the panel. And I don't know if y'all have seen Disclosure, but there are some powerful, articulated moments about trans women talking about feeling so excited to see the Crying Game and feeling like they were finally represented on screen. And it wasn't until 10 years later when they realized how problematic that was, and how, our own experiences and blinders and culture, the way it's all constructed is so compact and messy and but it totally illuminating. HP, thanks for sharing that. So final question, and Hillary, we've talked a little bit about this, and I want to start with your feedback on this, and then I'd love to get the other two perspectives on this. But when we acknowledge our own diversity with regards to heritage, socioeconomic status, politics, geography, et cetera, that's one part of diversity, but how do we as community leaders, filmmakers, storytellers, how do we make room for BIPOC filmmakers and community leaders and storytellers? And is there what can you help us articulate, or at least, explore an articulation of the fine line between using privilege to elevate stories of underrepresented groups versus telling stories that aren't ours to tell?
I can do my best. I think, this is a conversation that's been happening for years. I think it's being elevated now in this moment. And there are so many, there are whole panels on this too. So I'll do what I can in a short time, but, I think, for myself and my place in kind of documentary in this corner of the world, I have spent a lot of time thinking about my responsibility kind of in two buckets. And one is, what is my responsibility as a straight, cis, white woman without a disability in terms of my other filmmaking colleagues? And then the same sort of question as it applies to the communities that are in my stories and that I'm filming. And it's sort of two different questions and two different sets of answers. But I think the first part I would say is, I think as white filmmakers, we need to be doing a lot of self-assessment on what are our resources and what are our privileges, and are we resource hoarding? Like this to me feels like a really important self-assessment that we should all be doing. This is my first film. I think I have about I have this much, I've clawed my way into the industry about this much. I have some connections. I don't have all of the connections. We were able to raise a good chunk of money for the film, not a ton of money for the film, but my self-awareness of like where I am in the industry and what I can do with that is something that I try and keep a check on, because I think, in terms of the resources that I can share, it's like, who are the connections that I can introduce other emerging BIPOC filmmakers? Like, do you have a film in process and, you need a connection that I happen to have? Like, are those ways that I can share resources? Like, I was able to buy a camera, like my camera gear on a credit card, and I paid it off, and now I have a camera. Can I be loaning my camera package to other filmmakers who don't have their own gear right now? So I think there's a level of, again, like trying to be aware of the resources and privileges that I have and trying to let go of those. I think there are absolutely stories that I am not the best qualified person to tell. So sometimes letting go of resource holding means just like literally stepping back and saying like, hire someone else for this position, for this story. I'm not going to bring the best perspective to it. All of that is hard to do. This is a hard industry to like to make a living at, to find sustainability in. It's really freaking hard to like get offered, a good paying gig and turn it down. So, I think I'm doing my best there. And I think there's a lot of room for growth for all of us, but that's what I'm doing some processing around, I think. And then the other thing when it comes to the stories we tell and the people in front of the camera, this film that I just made, it's about women running for office. 2 of those women are women of color. And I think, and people have raised the question, how could I have been the best person to tell that story? And it's hard to answer, but I think, for me, limiting the story to just white women running for office felt like putting intentional blinders that would have been deeply misrepresentative of what that experience is. Mm-hmm. So once you're going into a story and, the 2 women of color, there's a young Black woman who grew up in Detroit, there's a middle-aged Korean immigrant. I do not share either one of those identities. Right. So I think it's... in that question, then it's about how are you committing to the communities and how are you showing up? When are you turning a camera off and sitting and listening? For me, it just involved like a lot of time. I filmed those women over several years and I learned a lot in the process. And then it's also super and deeply important, who's on your creative team. And for me, unfortunately, we just didn't have the funds for the first half of the film. So I played a lot of the creative roles. I was the shooter, the director, and the editor. So I wasn't able to bring folks onto my team in those particular roles, but there are a lot of other folks that it was important for all parts of sort of creative feedback and the creative process to say like, who's in the room and who is helping check me on like, this is what you're not seeing when you're talking about Maya and her experience growing up in Detroit. Like, this is what you're not getting as a white woman. And so just doing my best to have those people in the room and to sit and listen. I think, and then the last piece of it, I guess, too, is it was an ongoing process to raise the funds for the film, but that should not be just being able to pay people to make a living in this industry is also, regardless of what the topic of your story is, like you should have a fully diverse crew, and you should be like, if you are in a position to pay people to make a living and to find that sustainability in the career for themselves, like, yeah, you should always be asking yourselves, like, who are you hiring? Is it just the person who's closest to you and that you happen to know? Are you like really casting that wide net and making sure that you're considering, people from sort of all walks of life? So there are a lot of pieces. I can't promise that I have figured it out, but I think the framing of your question too is great, because I think part of that is not subscribing to sort of the paternalism that like, okay, because I'm the white filmmaker here, I have all of the privilege and I get to like dole it out to my other colleagues who are filmmakers of color. Like, that's not my position either. But it's a complicated question, and I'm happy to be part of these conversations. I'm happy, as Christine said, like that these are happening so like transparently right now. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to keep also just sitting and listening and absorbing and figuring out what my role is and what my place is in telling stories.
Thank you. Thank you for tackling that. Yeah, good stuff. Christine, can you talk a little bit about that from your perspective, just what those kinds of issues mean to you right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really comes down to ultimately to sharing resources and making things more accessible for more people, and sort of the realization that, I mean, I think there is room for everybody. At the end of the day, I mean, there is, I guess if you believe that there is abundance, there will be abundance. It's kind of one of those types of things. But yeah, I mean, I totally recognize what Hillary is saying. I mean, it's hard for everybody in this business, no matter where you are, and everybody has their own struggle, and that struggle is real for every person that is experiencing it. So it is hard, but at least I think that change and systemic change does need to happen, I don't think it's necessarily like the role of the independent filmmakers. We're just trying to survive. I mean, in all honesty, and who's going to do it for free or for the right price? I mean, sometimes it really comes down to that, and just the right person for the job, and who is next to you sometimes is like the right person you want to be with, because it's hard. This is hard, and it's not always fun, either. I mean, I love the process, but there's a lot of work involved, and whoever's like down for the work, is really, so I don't know if that answers your question at all, but.
Yeah, I mean, it's adding context and flavor, and that's what we're after, is we're just trying to get at the kernel, or at least I am. HP, can you speak to this a little bit?
I'll do my best. I don't think I could ever do better than what Hillary did there, because it was really, I mean, boy, this question was for you.
Yeah, no doubt.
And wow, what a load. And that's where I feel like, I'm not saying I'm going to stay in my lane here, but that is very much a question that I can't really answer, but I can speak from my own perspective with my own privilege. Because I do recognize the racism that I've encountered while trying to make it in film. And all the people of color that have worked with me on these films, I recognize all of that. At the same time, there are moments where I have to actually step back and say, like, I've been doing this for 16 years, and what privilege do I actually have right now? And I had, 2020 seemed to be the year that people have revisited my films and decided you should do young adult stuff. And that's cool. It's cool. I'm really happy about that, because I have a lot of young adults in my family who are some of my favorite people. But I did have a chance to, I was approached by a production company to adapt a very popular young adult novel written by a Filipino American. And she's tremendous. She has a very poetic heart. And I read the book and said, this is great. And I found out that they already adapted her first novel, and I thought that was great. And I stopped. And during the Zoom, I was very happy that it was a very, very diverse set of people producing, but I had to ask, I said, I appreciate that you're calling me because you enjoyed Bitter Melon, which is a Filipino-American film, and now you want to make this other Filipino-American film, but it is a very, very female book. And I appreciate that you like my take. Are you sure this is the right way to go? And they appreciated that I asked. They said yes. Thank you for being open to that and awake to the issue. But we do like your take, and I like that they liked my take. But then what happened was, like, some weeks passed, and it was one of the things that I had just kind of sitting there saying, okay, all these meetings were popping up for different projects, and every time I kept looking at that one Post-it, I would see it next to my calendar, in which I would have like a lunch date with a Filipino American filmmaker, and I thought to myself, like, what is she doing? Let's just talk. And I felt really weird again, and I just thought to myself, like, on the Filipino American landscape of filmmaking, it's hard enough as it is, it's like this little divot in Asian American filmmaking, which is its own divot, right?
Yeah.
And imagine being female in that divot of divots of divots, So I without backing out of the project, I just started speaking to all of my Filipino American filmmaker friends who, and not all of them, no offense, not all of everyone's right for this job, but the ones that I thought would do a good job doing a feature length dark comedy about a Filipino American sisterhood. And I went back and I was like, I don't think this is right. And I'm not saying that you're wrong, but I just don't know if it's right for me, especially knowing that there are some super talented Filipina American filmmakers trying to tell their stories, whether it's through someone else's screenplay or not. And they're struggling like I am, and maybe more so, right? Because sometimes you'll walk into a room, you'll walk into a pitch, and they'll say stupid things like, so female, Filipino, lesbian, 3 identities, too convoluted, pick one. And you'll hear stuff like that. Christine, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. It's a thing that like executives and producers will say. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I have this project that's sitting here right now, and it's totally for them, And so I gave it up. And I feel like that's like the least I could do, from my end with whatever privilege I have. Now, as far as I don't know, there is a fine line, right? Because I will say that as I read the book, I was like, oh, this is so me. Like I totally get like the immigrant experience. I know what it's like to be raised by immigrants, and I know what it's like to have that shame of having the Asian lunchbox while everyone else has Twinkies and sandwiches and Lunchables. I understood that too, right? And I was like, but I want this job. Mm-hmm. I want this. And so, and I think really what it boiled down to for me was I had to look at the big picture. I had to step back and I had to process everything I was feeling. And that's where it became a very selfish thing. Not selfish, but it was very much about self-care. Because then I thought to myself, like, am I gonna have to get a roommate? Because I don't know if I could live with myself after this. Like I as much as I relate to the book, I'm thinking this book was written by one woman.
Yeah.
And I'm glad there's a diverse team behind the production of this. But I just kind of feel like, imagine being that woman and just kind of seeing like a new lens thrown on this very personal book. I was like, I don't want to be that guy. Literally, not just that person. I don't want to be that guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh gosh. HP, Christine, Hillary. Oh my God.
Thank you, Kathryn.
Thanks for having us on.
Thanks for having us on. This was a great discussion.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Oh gosh. This is I could do this every week. Maybe not 5 days in a row, but just, really.
We need a break, Kathryn.
We'll deserve a break.
Yeah.
No, it's all good. But I mean, just to be able to tackle this kind of stuff with new peers, new colleagues, people all after the same thing, really. So I wish you the best, all of you. Please come back and see us. And especially when we are able to gather in person, come to San County. Let us treat you well. And
that's
what we already have.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Kathryn. And it was great to meet you guys too.
Great meeting you too.
Yeah, I'll be sure you're all connected offline.
That would be great, please.
That would be awesome.
Good. All right. Good night, you all.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Well, and now we're coming to the rest of our closing evening. I am thrilled to, well, you know what? I'm just going to take a second and say that conversation was really amazing. And now I'm still thrilled because I get to bring in our board of directors, the chair of our board of directors, Claire O'Neill. Hi, Claire.
That conversation was amazing. That was so great. I mean, every conversation this weekend, I have felt so privileged to get to hear people talk so much about what they care about and sharing it with all of us.
I agree with you, Claire. I just can't believe that we could be so lucky. I keep having the idiom wrong. Flies to honey, bees to honey. I don't know what it is, but I just, we keep putting out into the universe the things, the values of the Film Society and the kinds of stories that matter to us. We keep taking a seat at the table at the hard conversations. And now we just have a lot of new partners coming to chat with us and to have those conversations with us and share their artwork. It's just so rad.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what the Aunt Bee thing is either, but these, the people who have joined us this weekend have really brought so much more to the films and to our community and to the discussions that we're all going to keep having.
Right.
beyond this, because I mean, I just end up here making notes. HP says, "The mountain I want to die on."
I know. Wasn't that spectacular?
It's just, it's deep meaning poetry.
Yeah.
Said in the context of let's just talk about this. So there were so many things like that.
And did you have a particular moment this weekend that you really loved?
Well, actually, I had a great time with Rififi and hearing Jill Hales talk about the film in that way. That I always love to hear that. And the next film I watched was Aggie, and didn't have any idea that it was not about the team at Davis. So, and I loved it. I felt so inspired by that woman.
Yeah.
Then I started getting into the panels, and I never wanted one of those conversations to end.
Mm.
I mean, I felt like we should let them go.
I know. That's exactly how I felt. I was like, I guess this is it.
But I really had a sense that they enjoyed communicating with each other too. How about you? What was your moment?
Gosh, you know what? That's so funny because I've really enjoyed so much of it. I loved last night hearing the shorts filmmakers talk about giving their words of encouragement to young filmmakers, because it was also applicable to just people in general, like me. And it was all about, like, you know, steady as she goes, keep going, just keep going, keep making stuff.
It was also about take everything in.
Yeah.
Take it all in, because they're all stories.
Right.
And collaborate. And especially Sarah was talking about every class you take in school. It doesn't have to be a film class. It's all about the stories. No, I agree. I was ready.
Well, and what has now become a favorite moment traditionally of the film festival has been awards night. We started giving awards back in, I think in 2016, we started giving Filmmaker awards, and then our beloved friend Jackie Hoffner passed away in 2017. And the following year, we created an award in her honor with the help of Renee Finelli, whose idea from which this sprung. And we now have the 3rd annual Jackie Hoffner Heart and Hope Award. And we get to welcome another great community member, somebody that is equally as inspiring and after the truth as we are. Matt Villano, I'm going to bring you in. Hello, sir.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Matt is on the committee of the Jackie Hoffner Heart and Hope Award. And Matt, can you just introduce yourself? Tell us where you're calling in or dialing in or whatever from, and what you've been up to as of late.
Absolutely. I'm a local journalist. My name's Matt Villano. I'm a local journalist and local rabble-rouser, if you will. Calling in from my 85 square foot man cave / office in the garage of my home, where I've spent far too much time over the last 7 months. And it's been a real pleasure to be part of this committee from the very beginning. I did not have the pleasure of knowing Jackie, but I feel like I've gotten to know her by attempting to celebrate and honor her legacy over the last 3 years. So it's really an honor to be joining you tonight and to be presenting this award, Kathryn.
Yay. And before we get to the awardee, we are going to bring in the 2019 award winner to help us celebrate. Hello, Lizbeth.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Hi, Lizbeth.
Sure. Lizbeth, can you tell everybody your name, where you're dialing in from? What should I say? Where you're streaming in from and what you've been up to?
Okay, I have a really bad internet connection. I hope that my answer is fine. I couldn't hear you, but I'm very excited about this award. Thank you so much. That means too much for me last year, and I'm really happy to to see that this award coming to more members of our community. So it brings a lot of hope, and it brings me a lot of conscious about, my intervention in this community. What can I do to do better my community? And it is really special.
I love that. Well, I think without further ado, we should bring in our 2020 award winner. Ladies and gentlemen, please, well, I should say guys, gals, and non-binary pals, please welcome our friend, Susan Verde. Hi, Susan!
This is my first virtual, so I'm a little new at this. You all seem very relaxed.
Well, welcome, welcome, welcome. So glad to have you here.
Thank you. You see my beautiful flowers that arrived today?
Gorgeous.
Oh, great.
Just gorgeous. And Susan, can you turn down the volume on your computer just a little bit?
Yeah. It's actually almost at 0.
Oh, okay.
Still too low? Still too low? I can back up. Still too
Nope,
low?
we're just getting some feedback, but that's okay. So, Susan, we're Matt. If you'd like to go ahead and do the official presenting.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kathryn. And Susan, again, my name is Matt Villano. Congratulations. It's my pleasure to present this year's Jackie Hoffner Heart and Hope Award to you. For those of you who do not know Susan, Susan has led the Alexander Valley Film Society screening team as a volunteer for 5 years. She's contributed hundreds of hours as a volunteer, and she's helped shape really the entire screening team program into a fluid and fully operational system designed to support staff decisions. Susan's volunteer efforts significantly elevated the Film Society, and her experience has really deeply influenced the AVFS policy and programming. Her steadfast involvement with the organization helped usher in a resolve to adapt events for equitable access and to ensure that the Film Society programming becomes more inclusive, which is important and something that benefits all of us. She's been tireless in her advocacy efforts for the disabled community. She contributes her voice regularly within the Film Society when she's given the opportunity to use film as a platform. Finally, Susan's heart is wide open for those who have experienced injustice, which is something that I can personally get behind and embrace. She's passionate about equity and views film as a medium to build bridges and to conduct life-changing conversations. Her love of film exceeds all else, and she's devoted to sharing the power of film so that all may learn and grow from it. So Susan, congratulations, and thank you for inspiring all of us.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah, as I have to say, when Kathryn called me, I was a little like, what? Are you kidding? What? That doesn't seem right. But thank you. Thank you for acknowledging my effort. It has really been nothing less than a pleasure to work with Kathryn and the Film Society and all the amazing volunteers that have made this possible. And it really is amazing to contribute to something in our community that is so great and just every year just keeps just getting bigger and bigger. So it really is my pleasure, truly. And yeah, thank you so much. It really, I'm still kind of stunned. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Susan. Congratulations. You deserve every moment of this. And Matt, thank you for joining us to present, and Lizbeth for giving historical context to the import of this moment. Bless up all of you.
Can I say one more thing?
You sure can.
Hashtag Maya Jones for president.
Yes!
She's amazing. She's amazing. So thank you guys all again for everything that's led up to today and this amazing opportunity, and for all the great film. It's been a great festival, Kathryn. It's been fantastic. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good night, y'all. Claire, you stick around.
Okay, thank you, Susan. Thanks, Matt. Bye, Lizbeth.
Okay, so now, Claire, as if it could get any better. It's just been so good. Now, let me check my notes. I think we're going to bring in, who's this? Tess? Who's this Tess that has been running the whole thing? Oh, Tess. Hi.
How are you?
Everybody, this is Tess. Oh, and look, Hillary's on board. That's great. Oh, Tess. I have been thanking you all weekend, but it's almost like words, they just don't cut it. You have just been such a light and such a partner in this. And for all of you out there who had a tech question or a question about movies or where to go for this or where to go for that, this is the person who was behind all of those answers. And your patience and your light are incomparable. So thank you so much for being here and being a part of this.
Oh, well, thank you. It's my pleasure. And thank you for the opportunity. It's been amazing.
I think the phrase I texted most often the past 4 days was just ask Tess. Can I do this? Is that going to happen? How's that going to work? And it was like, Tess will know this.
Yes.
So, thank you for always knowing or finding out and acting always that it was a perfectly legitimate question.
My pleasure. It was great working with everybody and talking to everybody and helping and just being a part of such an amazing organization.
I hope you got to watch a little bit of it, or at least you get the next couple days to kind of catch up with it, because they were truly remarkable films and amazing conversations. And you may have been running all the hamster wheels behind the scenes and not gotten to see that. So I hope that you will.
I did. I saw lots of 20-minute little clips here and there. I'd go back, go back. But I caught a lot of it.
And did you have a favorite moment so far, or do you need to process for a while?
I think really my favorite was getting to meet some of these filmmakers. And I had some great conversations with Christine Yu, and being able to chat with HP Mendoza was really an honor for me. And also working with the students has been great. So it's been amazing.
Well, what do you say we hand out some awards?
Yes.
Can we do that? So we have 3 awards. They're all audience awards. And just to remind everybody, voting closed at 7 p.m. sharp. We ran the report at 7:01 p.m. And closed off the voting. We have a audience award for Best Short, audience award for Best Feature-Length Narrative, and audience award for Best Feature-Length Documentary. So, Tess, would you do the honor of announcing our short film winner?
Yes, I've always wanted to do this.
Good.
And the audience award for Best Short goes to Abuelos by Rodrigo Reyes.
Yay! Woohoo! Fireworks! Blah, 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 blah.
Kathryn, don't you have one of those buttons that will make applause jump out into the room? That's what we need.
I have one on my iPhone, but not on this platform.
Okay. Well, the 3 of us will have to be it then.
Yes. Claire, would you please give us the next one?
Yes, I am pleased to announce that the audience has spoken and is awarding the Best Full-Length Narrative to Critical Thinking, that was directed by John Leguizamo.
Yay! Tess, how wonderful! Yay! Yay, HP, yes! Okay.
And the audience award for Best Full-Length Documentary goes to Represent, which was directed by Hillary Bachelder, who's also been on our panels. So it's been a really delight to have her and the film and the conversations.
Amazing. And so everyone knows we have cash awards of $1,000 apiece. So we will be in touch with our filmmakers after the festival and make arrangements to get them their funds. Congratulations to everyone. How exciting.
Yes, congratulations to everyone for all the work that goes into these films. And they are all labors of love and passion, and they all take so long. So it's been a long road for all of you, and we hope this is just a little star on that path here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Claire, Tess, thank you both for everything that you've done for the Film Society and for this weekend. It's been just so much fun. And Hillary has heard the good news. That's amazing. So I will let you both out to enjoy the rest of your night, evening.
I think we give a big round of applause to you, Kathryn, because you did an amazing job with all of this. You are the push behind it all. So
that's true. The big round means me and Tess, but it's heartfelt, and you know that there are supporters out there cheering at home. Thank you so much for all you did to pull this off, the two of you. But Kathryn, for deciding at the very beginning that we were going to do it anyway. And it was great.
Thank you. And you're welcome. You're welcome. It's really been my pleasure doing it. And when you have colleagues like this and you have a community to serve like we have, it really makes it all that much easier, as complicated as it can get, and making sure you're hitting the right notes and dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's. But yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And
with that, we will let you go.
I'll let you go, and then I will say goodnight to everybody. So thank you both. Sleep well, and we'll talk soon. Well, that does it for the 2020 Alexander Valley Film Festival. I look back over the last 5 days, and there's been a lot of coffee. There's been some junk food. There's been some good sleeps here and there. But most of all, it's just been a whirlwind of good energy and community spirit. It is really such a personal privilege and honor to be able to serve in this role for us and to be able to connect with you all in this time that is so challenging. I'd do it again tomorrow. I really would. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you for your support. Remember, we do this again in 6 months. Our permanent days move to April 28th to May 2nd in 2021. So we'll see you soon, probably sooner than later. Good night, everyone. Thank you for having a great festival with us, and we'll see you at the movies.